everyone, it's Blake from ChessPathways.com, and in today's video, I want to talk to you all about Swiss-style tournaments and why they are, by and large, considered the best possible tournament format for chess. And this is important for chess players to understand, because if you sign up for a tournament, there's a very good chance it's going to be run in a Swiss format instead of, a round robin or a single elimination or whatever other format you're more familiar with. And I know when I first started playing chess, I had never heard of Swiss tournaments before, but over the years, I came to appreciate all the benefits of this format, and I see why it's so popular. So by the end of this video, you're going to understand the benefits of Swiss tournaments, how they work. I'll even run through a quick example of how I would handle the pairings if I were to run a Swiss-style tournament. So first of all, what is a Swiss tournament? How does this format work? There's no elimination. It's not like an elimination tournament. Whether you win, lose, or draw your first game, you are still in the tournament. Instead, points are assigned every round for how you performed in your game. If you won your game, you get 1 point for the tournament. If you drew your game, you get half a point. And if you lost, that is worth 0 points. And then every round, you are paired against someone who has the same score as you. This is the fundamental principle of Swiss-style tournaments. And it's important to remember there's nothing chess-specific about this system. This system can be used for any kind of gaming tournament. In fact, there's many other, communities out there who have learned a lot from chess, both in terms of the rating system, which I also have a video on. I'll put a link down in the description to that. And in terms of this Swiss-style tournament, there's no reason this wouldn't work for other games as well. But by and large, this is by far the most popular tournament format for chess tournaments. So let's talk about the benefits of this system and why it's so popular. So why are Swiss tournaments the best? Number one, it has an equally powering narrowing effect as an elimination tournament. And this kind of surprises a lot of people. I know when I first heard of this tournament format, I thought, well, if no one's getting eliminated, how are we going to prevent some massive tie for first place, right? But if you think about it, let's say you have 32 people in a single elimination tournament. It's going to take 5 rounds to narrow down to a winner, right? Because the first round you have 32, then 16, 8, 4, 2, 1, right? Well, it's the same in a Swiss tournament. If you start a Swiss tournament with 32 people, then at most, at the end of round number 1, there can only be up to 16 people with a perfect score of 1 out of 1, right? In fact, there's probably going to be less because of draws in chess. But then let's say, 16 people win their first round game, they're all going to be paired against each other in round 2, right? Because that fundamental principle is you get paired against someone with the same score as you if possible. So if those 16 people all get paired against each other, then at most, by the end of 2 rounds, there can only be up to 8 people with a perfect score. So kind of at the top stratification of this Swiss-style tournament, you're still cutting the number of perfect scores in half every round, just like with a single elimination tournament. Now, unlike a single elimination tournament, there's no elimination in a Swiss-style tournament, which has a couple benefits. Number one, you can draw a game or lose a game and still claw your way back up to the top, possibly. I know in some of the biggest, open tournaments in the world, a big 9-round Swiss tournament like the US Open or the World Open, usually no one finishes with a score higher than, 7 out of 9 or 7.5 out of 9. Because, again, once you win your first 4 or 5 games, you're probably getting paired with grandmasters every round, and it's a bunch of grandmasters getting paired against each other at the top levels of these tournaments. It's very hard to just go crush a bunch of grandmasters in a row, obviously. There's lots of draws. And a score of 7 or 7.5 out of 9 is considered very, very good for a Swiss tournament. But also, let's say you're out of contention. Again, you don't get eliminated. You're actually going to get paired against people very similarly skilled to you in later rounds. Let's say you're playing a big 9-round Swiss tournament. There's a wide variation of skill levels in this tournament. Maybe you're frustrated your first couple games, but by the later rounds, let's say it's round 7 of the tournament, and you have a score of 2 out of 7, well, you're going to be paired against someone else who has 2 out of 7, and they probably have a very similar skill level to you. So even if there's a very wide range of skill levels and ratings within a tournament, by the later rounds, everyone's playing good games and playing people who are similarly skilled to themselves. That's why a lot of chess players like this format. And then the third major benefit is that this format easily accommodates draws, uneven player numbers, and missed rounds. For example, a single elimination tournament, there's no convenient way to accommodate draws. Which is a big reason that format's not very popular for chess and other games that have draws. There are some workarounds. At the top levels of chess, there are some elimination tournaments where, you play 2 games against your opponent, one with white, one with black, and if you split them evenly, then you do blitz playoffs. But it's very inconvenient. In a Swiss tournament, you can draw a game, mark it down as half a point, move on to the next round. Now, for uneven player numbers, we know, for example, in single elimination tournaments, you have to have a very specific number of players to make that work, right? Usually a power of 2. You can have a 16-person tournament or a 32-person tournament. And again, there's workarounds for those uneven numbers, but it's kind of ugly. Whereas in a Swiss tournament, you don't really have to care. If you have 34, 36 players, 38 players, you just pair them against each other, and the system works itself out. Even if you have an odd number, someone's going to have to miss around, but that's where these half-point buys and full-point buys come in. Half-point buys can be awarded for Swiss tournaments when a player voluntarily doesn't want to play around. Let's say they want to play a tournament this weekend, but they can't make the Saturday night game, they have a conflict. If it was an elimination tournament, what do? You just have to forfeit that round and you're out of the tournament. But in a Swiss tournament, you can request a half-point buy and say, please just assign me half a point for that round. And no one can really get an unfair advantage by doing this because, to win the tournament, you have to have an average of, above a 50% score. So taking that 50% score for one round, it's not an advantage, but it does give you a chance to win the tournament. It keeps you alive in the tournament, and you can fight on and play the next day if you have to miss a round. A full point buy is given out if the tournament organizer has to force you to miss a round due to the uneven player number. Let's say you start a Swiss tournament with 17 players. Well, of course, one person's not going to get paired, and they are awarded a full point for that round just like they won the game. And of course, this is an advantage for the tournament. They don't want to give this advantage to someone who is very clearly in the running, right? If it was the last round of a tournament, you have two people who are, 4 out of 4, and it's the fifth round. You wouldn't give the full point buy to one of those players. That wouldn't be fair. So the full point buy is always given to whoever has the lowest score in the tournament. And if there's multiple players with the lowest score, let's say there's, a few players who are 0 out of 4, you would give the full point buy to whoever has the lowest rating among those players. If you don't know the players' ratings, that's fine. You can give it randomly to one of the players with the lowest score. So these are the main benefits of Swiss-style tournaments, and I'm about to get into an example of how the pairings actually work. But before we get into that, if you're watching this right when it comes out, if you're watching this in late November of 2020, I'm actually just about to start hosting the first ever Chess Pathways Swiss-style tournament for a bunch of my students. We have over 20 people signed up. These are students in the Chess Unlocked coaching program. If you're interested, I am opening up registration this week. Please send me an email. I'll put a link down in the description. I'll get you signed up for that tournament as well as the coaching as well. If you're looking to play your first tournament or just looking to play a tournament in general among serious chess players who are getting coached, you want to be coached yourself, I think this is a really good opportunity. Of course, if you're watching this video later, that tournament might not be going on. I'm sure we'll have others in the future. Please reach out, and I'll see what I can do for you. But alright, now let's get into an example of how the pairings actually work for a Swiss-style tournament. So here we go. Let's get into Excel, and let's say we have a tournament with 17 players signed up. I hope this is big enough to see. I wonder if I can zoom in a little bit here in Excel. There we go. That's a bit bigger. Maybe zoom out a little bit. There we go. We got 17 players signed up for this tournament. So, just as kind of a bonus fun question, think about how you would pair this tournament if it was a single elimination tournament. Go ahead and pause the video if you want to think about it. Kind of a fun exercise here. Alright, if you're back with me. So if this were a single elimination style tournament, what would you do? First of all, you have to get it down to a power of 2, right? So you would pair 16 and 17 against each other. They're the lowest seeds. You would want them to play each other and eliminate one of them. And then you would pair the winner of that against 1, you'd pair 2 against 15, 3 against 14, on and on and on, right? And I'm assuming, of course, that these players are given in rating order, where player 1 is the highest rated, 17 is the lowest rated. If you don't know their ratings, that's fine, they'd all just be random. In a Swiss tournament, of course, first we have to assign the full point buy. We have an odd number here. We have to give the full point buy to someone. We know that we want to give it to the lowest scoring player of the lowest rating. Here, everyone has an equal score. Everyone has 0 out of 0. So we'd give this guy the full point buy, and he would have 1 point going into round 2. Now, how do we pair the rest of them? Unlike in an elimination tournament, you don't go 1 versus 16, 2 versus 15. You actually pair the top half against the bottom half so that everyone has an equal distance in terms of players from their opponent. So you actually pair 1 versus 9, 2 versus 10, versus 11, on and on and on, down through the top half. And of course, this guy is versus 1, versus 2, like that. Splitting up the halves like this. So it's 1 against 9, 2 against 10, 3 against 11, 4 against 12. And in terms of the colors you assign them, you also want to do this so that there's even distributions of white and black against the top and the bottom groups. Because again, you're assuming these players are likely to win, and you have to pair them against each other in round 2. You don't want them all to be white their first game, because then you'd have to give a bunch of people 2 whites in a row when you pair them among each other. So usually how it works, you start with white or black for this guy, black versus 10, white versus 11, black versus 12, white versus 13, black versus 14, and I filled in the rest to save time. So this is exactly how the first round pairing would look for a Swiss-style tournament. Now let's say we get some results coming in. Let's say that the results look something like this. That looks to be a reasonable result for how the top half's going to do against the bottom half. I'll fill in the corresponding scores here for the bottom half. 1, 1, 0, 0. Now, how would I pair round 2? And again, you don't have to understand every little nuance here to understand the benefits of Swiss-style tournaments. I think you've gotten all the benefits out of this video already. This is just more for those who want to go a bit more in-depth to see how this system works. So if I was going to pair round 2, let's call this round 1, results. So for round 2, I'm going to start by pairing the 1s against each other, right? So let's highlight all of our 1s, right? And now I also want to check their colors here, because you want to alternate colors if you can. In a 5-round tournament, for example, ideally every player should get 3 of one color and 2 of another. You don't want to give someone, 4 whites or 4 blacks. That wouldn't be fair. Another thing about Swiss-style tournaments, you never pair the same players against each other more than once, and you never assign the full point buy to someone more than once, right, for obvious reasons. And let's say in this round, this player number 5, he can't make it to this round, he's got something going on with his family, he needs to take the round off, and he requested a half-point buy. So, we'll mark that down, and we're going to pair these 1s against each other. So to start out with, let's take a look at their color distribution. We have a couple guys here who had white in round 1. I'm going to mark them as orange. We had a couple people here who had black in round 1. I'm going to mark them as blue. And then we have this guy who has not played white or black yet. Let's mark him as dark blue. So there's a couple factors to balance here. You still want to pair the top half against the bottom half within each cohort. So within this 1 out of 1 cohort, we'd like to pair these 4 players against these 4 players if we could. But we also want to alternate colors. So there's a couple different, ways to prioritize this. Different softwares do it differently. Again, you don't really have to understand all the nuances. But if I was trying to pair this by hand, we have a nice pairing here, 1 against 5 with alternate colors. So I'll go ahead and fill that in. Give this guy black versus player 8. Give this guy white versus 1. Can we pair the 2nd against the 6th? I wouldn't like to, because they both had black last round. Let's instead pair this guy against this guy, so we can alternate their colors. So white versus 14. He would have black versus 2. And then it seems to me this should be black versus 13, white versus 3. And then this guy's going to have to play this guy. This guy has no, we call it a color preference. This guy has no color preference. He hasn't been assigned any color. This guy has a color preference of black because he was white last round, so he's going to be black versus 17, white versus 7. Then we've got to pair these people with half a point, and we can't pair them against each other again. So usually you'd pair them against the highest people with 0. So I'd like to pair this guy against this guy. I can't because they both had black, or I guess I could, but I don't really want to. So let's instead pair him against 10. I'll give him white versus 10, black versus 4. Now I gotta pair this guy with half a point. I can match him with this top 0 because the colors work out. So white versus 12, black versus 6. And now I just have to pair the remaining 0s. Sadly, the colors don't work out because we have 3 blacks and 1 white. That happens sometimes. Sometimes you do get the same color twice in a row. You just have to really make sure in that 3rd round that you don't give the same player the color 3 times in a row. So let's give him white versus 15, black versus 9, white versus 16, black versus 11. All right, so I filled in the results and made the format a bit nicer to look at. We have the total score over here for column L. And notice here, after only 2 rounds, there's only 4 players here with a perfect score, which is just about the most there ever can be. There probably could be 5 in some cases, but really, after 2 rounds, you're only going to have a quarter of the field at best with a perfect score. So let's pair one more round just as an example. So first of all, no one's taking their half point buy this round. Everyone wants to play the round. We have to give it to someone. We're going to have to give the full point buy to someone, and it's going to be the person with the lowest score of the lowest rating. So I see a 0 right here to give it to. He is going to get a buy and the full point. And now how do we pair the other 16? Again, start with kind of the top down. We got to pair these 2s against each other. They've all had one white and one black, so there's no strong color preference here. There is we call it a weak color preference. You would like to alternate people's colors if you could, but they've all played an equal number of whites and blacks, so I'm really just going to pair it 1 versus 3 and 2 versus 4. So let's give this guy white versus 3, black versus 1. What would this guy be? He'd be black versus 7, and this guy'd be white versus 2. Next, we've got this one guy with 1.5 to deal with. There's no one else with 1.5, so we have to pair him against the highest one. You could argue to pair him against this guy, because he's the highest one. You could also argue to pair him against this guy, because he's the highest one, where the color alternation works. I believe most softwares will pair him against this guy, because again, there's no strong color preference, only a weak one. Most players have one white and one black, so let's give him black versus 8. We'll give him white versus 4. Next, we have to pair the rest of the ones against each other, besides the one who was paired with the 1.5 guy. We have an odd number remaining, so the bottom one is going to be paired with the top person with half a point, right? So we have to pair these 4 against each other, making sure not to pair anyone against each other more than once, but I think it's all going to work out. This guy against this guy against this guy, right? I filled out those 4 for you, and again, we have to pair this guy against the highest person with half, which is this guy. So this guy does have a color preference. He had a bye last round. He's only played white, so he has to be black. This guy has no strong color preference. Actually, he does, because he had a bye too. So they both have a strong preference for black. So I actually don't like that pairing. I'm going to give this guy his black that he's due, but I'll make it against this guy with no strong color preference. He's also a half point. So I'll make him black versus 6, white versus 17. Next up are the rest of the 1/2s. Again, we have an odd number, so the bottom one is going to be paired against a 0. We want to pair the top 2 if we can. And this guy has a strong preference for black because he has only played white. So he's going to be black versus 11, white versus 5. And that leaves this guy with half to be paired against the lone remaining 0. No strong preference there. So we alternate this guy, white versus 10, and black versus 16. And there you have it. And you see how this kind of score distribution is very typical for what you'll see on a typical wall chart at a chess tournament. Lots of higher scores concentrated towards the top, lower scores towards the bottom. You'll have some people kind of underperforming, some people kind of overperforming. We see this guy in particular got kind of lucky with his pairings, right? Because he got to play the full point bye guy in round 2. But you see how the tournament makes up for it, right? Now he's paired against the 2 seed, who's 2 out of 2 as well. And by the end of, just 4 or 5 rounds, the best players are going to rise to the top. Again, we get pretty much all the benefits of single elimination tournaments, but all those other benefits as well, with no one getting eliminated, good matchups for everyone in the later rounds. Alright, thanks for watching everyone. Please make sure you visit chesspathways.com and get signed up today. It's totally free, only takes 5 seconds, and I will send you a free move-by-move guide to chess thinking when you do. And as well, if you want to play in the very first Swiss tournament that we are hosting coming up, please send me an email. There's a link down in the description. We'll get you signed up. Doesn't matter if you're an expert or master, or if you're totally new to chess, we have all different skill levels in this coaching program, and you'll fit right in if you want to get better at chess. Thanks, and I will see you there.